Chuck Schumer and the Democrats now threatening and swearing that they're going to reject the Republican bill and move forward towards a shutdown. Here is what Chuck Schumer explained last night on the floor of the Senate.
Mr. President,
the Democratic leader.
Funding the government should be a bipartisan effort, but Republicans chose a partisan path, drafting their continuing resolution without any input from congressional Democrats. Because of that, Republicans do not have the votes in the Senate to invoke cloture on the House CR. Our caucus is unified on a clean April 11th CR that will keep the government open and give Congress time to negotiate bipartisan legislation that can pass.
They want to shove more pork back in, which is weird because it's a continuing resolution, right? It's basically freezing funding at the prior levels, not introducing anything new, not cutting anything. It's just continuing things, right? We've already covered many of these. Now they're going to say it's not clean. They shove something else in there, blah, blah, blah. But it's essentially the same. So it looks very hypocritical when they reject this CR after having voted for the prior CRs, historically speaking, just to continue the spending. Now, people like Thomas Massie have also come out and said, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm not going to vote for this. Obviously, he did not vote for it. And his justification for that was that it is an extension of the Biden administration spending, literally. So he's like, Democrats, morons, this is your money. This is your spending. Now, Trump, right, I've read other headlines that the administration is selling this, saying, we'll just impound the funds, essentially, right, without saying that. We won't spend it the way that Joe Biden was going to spend it. Only certain amounts of money are appropriated for certain ends. The other is just general spigot of money. This is going to be dedicated to climate change or whatever. Okay, we'll talk about climate change and how oil is necessary for the planet to function, right? You can read that book called Fossil Future. So the point is, there's a lot of stuff you could spend money on climate change for that's not the old version of climate change. It's for the MAGA version of climate change. You know what I'm saying? Whatever that is. We're going to change the climate, all right, starting with this oil refinery right here. So you can understand that the battle will be in the execution, not so much in the appropriation, which is what the Trump administration has been promising. So I think that's why the Democrats are squirrely on this, because they realize, all right, yeah, it's going to be a continuing resolution. The same money will go over that was going to go over already. However, there's no guarantees that it will be spent accordingly, and they're not going to be able to stick their grubby, disgusting little fingers right into the mix to try to siphon off funds for their own family members. So that's Chuck Schumer. Now, there's a lot of reaction to this. Democrats and wokeness caught this one pretty ridiculous, saying about 50 House Democrats just posted the same exact talking points, literally word for word, scrolling through them, word for word. House Democrats stand united for a 4-week funding extension that stops harmful cuts. Okay, that's what it's all about. Keeps the government open, allows Congress to reach a true bipartisan funding agreement. I am ready to vote for a 4-week extension today, tomorrow, or Friday. That wrap, all of them, one after another. Those are your and I think they're probably going to say, we're unified. That's why we copy and paste each other, because we're all in this together. And that was Cory Booker's excuse when they were all making that same video of each other. They're all, whatever, started with the crap word, the poop word, because that's all they talk about is bodily orifices and fecal matter. This is another strange, of course, evidentiary point of their NPC programming. That just means they're all essentially the same. So they'll obstruct on this one, says Natalie over here on X, Natalie Denishalin, said this: I am begging the left to discover a thesaurus. Can they come up with an original idea at all, ever? Same thing here, just in a different format. Not surprising at all. But there will be repercussions for this. Scott Bessent says, not going to be a good idea if the Democrats own the shutdown. They're going to be a lot unhappier than they are now.
Possible government shutdown. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying the Democrats are going to reject a government funding bill. We have this deadline tomorrow night. What is your expectation, Mr. Secretary, and how destructive would this be?
It'd be incredibly disruptive. And look, Sarah, I know you said you've been in Singapore all week, but I think the underreported story since January 20th and of the past few weeks is this incredible Republican unity and this Democratic disarray. We've seen Speaker Johnson get through with President Trump's help a tax bill, get it over the Senate. We saw a clean CR bill, And if Senator Schumer wants to reject it, hurt the American people, close down the government, and they're going to own any of the problems that go with it, including economic slowdown. And if this is all they got, then they ought to regather and think about what they're doing to the American people and the economy.
Yeah, and we'll see how the media frames it. You can see how they're already trying to frame it right now. It's this guy, look at the stock market. It's all red. Right. Whenever they do this, whenever he's not talking about the stock market or the stocks, they're talking about the shutdown. They're trying to smear him by saying, oh, look, the stock market's going down. And honestly, I know a lot more people have money wrapped up in stocks than, let's say, pharmaceutical companies, or for example, like a subset of those stocks. A lot of people's 401ks and retirement plans are embedded or associated, at least, with the stock market. And so rises and falls impact a lot more people than other things like firing a bunch of USAID people. So there are consequences to it. I think personally, I'm less worried about the stock market's ebbs and flows at the current moment. I think that it's being exploited. It reminds me of the COVID death count scoreboard. Remember that? Like every time they put Trump on the screen, they'd be like, oh, 50,000 are dead. 5,000 more are dead. 100,000 are dead. Every single day. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then Biden so-called won the election. And then it was like the number of vaccinated that were saved. Do you remember that? And they turned it into a green scoreboard. And it was like 100,000 vaccinated, 1.1 million vaccinated. Constantly, the whole narrative shift. Right. So they're doing the same type of garbage here. And a lot of the stock market, in my interpretation of what's happening in this economy at a macro level, is just government printed money being stashed into these places. Right. So in other words, when you have Joe Biden giving Stacey Abrams $2 billion, now I know she didn't get that money because we stepped in and stopped that. But the point was that grift was going on way before we ever caught that and ever put the brakes on this whole scam. So if they're getting billions of dollars hand over fist, they have to shove it somewhere, right? They're putting it somewhere. So these people who are ultimately getting it once it trickles down into their bank accounts are dumping it in the stock markets. They're buying up all the real estate. All of this government grift is squeezing out the supply for the rest of us. And now what I think is happening is they're all catching. They're like, oh, crap, the grift is over. We're not going to be getting our billions anymore. So they're divesting. They're pulling their money out of the stock market because they know they're not getting anymore, right? So all of that inflation money needed to be stored somewhere. And some of them put it in crypto. Some of them put it in the stock. Some of them put it elsewhere in hard assets, maybe housing and other things. But now they're going to have to liquidate because they're realizing that their floodgates and the spigots are being shut off. So this is almost, in a way, I know it hurts 401k holders and other people who are in the stock markets, especially those who are in it far and away, but it's like a measure of success. It's, hey, this is a return to norm. Like we want inflation to come down. We want all that fake money that was printed to come out of the markets and be put to better utility. And you can't just store it somewhere and claim economic gain. It's like you just print $1 trillion. Everybody shoves it in the stock market, goes up, and they go, wow, this is a great economy. With what, your fake money? No. So again, it seems like it's, and I'm not a stock market expert or any of those things, but macro wise, we've seen what's going on. Where's the money going? And the stock market is adjusting accordingly. So I think they know what they're doing, to be honest. And the Democrats are obstructing just for the sake of obstruction because they hate America and Trump much more than they hate Trump much more than they like America, right? They'd rather see the star quarterback get sacked than have their team win and have the star quarterback hoisted up on the shoulders. So Speaker Johnson said the following: the House has done its job and passed a clean CR to fund the federal government. If the Senate Democrats block an up or down vote on this, then it's crystal clear. They want the government shut down. Period. Full stop. And of course, the Schumer shutdown has a nice ring to it. And a lot of this is political. It just matters who's going to get the blame for it. And Republicans, we've played this game many times on the other end. Remember how many times we've done this? We're just sitting here, shut it down. Somebody stop Biden. Cancel everything. We don't care. Sell the White House. Do it now, immediately. We're just like losing our minds. And the Republicans always CR'd. There was no shutdowns, I don't think. It was all, or if it was like 3 days. Or I think one was like 15 days at one, like the longest. Okay. So everything gets funded, everything gets paid, and the Republicans always buckled in hindsight because they were scared of being blamed for it, right? And they were not in the majority in many of those, but they did not want the blame for the shutdown. Everybody gets mad at the party who causes the shutdown. So now it's like an old switcheroo reversing on this one. And Johnson is saying it's in the Democrats' court now. So here's what the Democrats say. So Politico dropped this one yesterday. Let's see if there's an update on this. They have a bunch of live updates that they're posting. Says Schumer is hoping that Democrats can get an amendment vote that would ease the way for GOP funding. The lawmakers emerged from a closed-door lunch on Wednesday. They said, we're not helping the Republicans on their 7-month bill, but we've got a 30-day alternative, so we can come back and do this again later. Democrats do have some leeway to make demands despite being in the minority in order to meet the Friday night deadline to avoid the shutdown Friday night. Clock is ticking, baby. Republicans will need an agreement from all 100 senators to speed up consideration of the House GOP funding bill, which would otherwise take days to get through the chamber. Republicans also need at least 8 Democrats to join them. I don't know if that's going to happen. In overcoming the procedural hurdles to be able to move to a final vote, Republicans can ultimately pass the funding bill by simple majority, meaning that they would not need Democrat votes for the final step, but they need them to get over the hurdles, right? So in the final step, it's simple majority, but in order to, I think, invoke cloture or whatever, you got to get to 61 or 60 rather. We should vote on that. Chuck Schumer said they don't have the votes to invoke cloture on the House CR. Schumer made no mention during his floor speech of wanting the amendment to happen, but senators emerging on Wednesday said that's the crux of the strategies. What's your alternative if you don't have another plan or if you don't like this plan? That could also give them a potential off-ramp to vote on a final House-passed proposal if Republicans agree to a short-term stopgap, even if it fails. We want an opportunity to get an amendment vote or two, right? So they don't want a clean CR. They want to shove something in there. That's what we're insisting on for a vote for cloture. What do you think that amendment would be? Probably to appropriate very specifically all of the money that was canceled by Doge, right? To undo what Doge is doing or to ban Doge entirely. And this is where we get very squirrely on this because we're waiting for some squishy Republicans to join in on that. Let's give them something, right? Republicans currently, like Murkowski, we should give them something. It's only fair. Republicans currently have 1 Democratic yes vote. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, meaning seven more votes are necessary. Several Democrats have refused to say how they will vote, leaving open a potential pathway for approving this deal. But there's also signs that the Democrats and their caucus is continuing to grow. Senator Peter Welch became the latest Democrat saying, I oppose this. As a Democrat, I want the federal government to work. No, you don't. For you, maybe. Not to shut down. Republicans need to come back to the table and pass a clean 1-month CR that allows budget negotiations to continue, he added. So they want to bring it all back. I had a clip of Fetterman out here, and he was talking with Manu Raju over from CNN. Here's what that sounded like.
Democrats are going to have the choice to vote for whether you want it's the cloture or the final one. And if you refuse to, or you withhold your vote, you're voting about shutting the government down. And so that's always been my point. Now, it's a CR that we all agree we don't like, and we don't co-sign on all of those elements. But for me, it's about we can't ever allow the government to shut down.
And there are a lot of Democrats, Jake, who are in that camp right now, and it remains to be seen how long Schumer could keep them on his side. We expect that they would need at least 8 Democrats to vote to break a filibuster. That vote could happen as early as Friday morning, and that vote would just be hours before the deadline, which is 11:59 p.m. Friday night. And if it does ultimately lead to a shutdown, Jake, some Democrats are just simply worried what Donald Trump would do in that situation.
Yeah.
Shut down, having Congress having to rely on Republican votes to reopen the government, how much Trump would demand in that case, which is why at the end of the day, some Democrats and Republicans believe a deal could be averted in the last minute here, or Democrats ultimately could decide to vote for this Republican bill and send it into law. So some time to play out here. But at the moment, Jake, the Democratic leader indicating he plans to fight this as soon as Friday.
All right, we'll see. See, that's what I like there, right? They don't really know. It's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. You sign the bill, you get your 9 months, you all the way till September of the same funding that Joe Biden was going to have anyways, and you can take it and run with it. Now, Trump is going to continue to do what Trump's going to do, or you can try to fight for it all. And the Republicans better not give an inch, baby. They better just let the Democrats own this shutdown. So then Trump can have carte blanche to do whatever he wants. Oh, no, everybody's gone. Weird. Everybody's gone. Nobody showed up to work today. All right, clear it out. Everybody clear it out. Yep, bring in the wheelbarrows. Throw it in there. And let's just dump everything right into the dumpsters. Okay, so that could really be a possibility, and that might be concerning for the Democrats.